Baruch atah Adonai le'olam shehakol niv'borei. L'chaim, l'chaim l'bracha. Afreilchen, happy Hanukkah. We're going to learn today, start at least, about a prayer that we say now in Hanukkah 3 times a day for the 3 Amidas. It's called Alanisim. Thanking God for the miracles, the redemption, the mighty deeds, for the saving acts, for the wonders for which you have wrought for our ancestors in those days at this time. So this is in the Amida, in the silent Shemona Esrei prayer that we say, that we add. By the way, if you forget adding it, and you said Hashem's name, you don't go back. Like some things, if you forget, you have to go back to say them. But not this particular prayer. So, just briefly, what the words say, in the days of Matisyahu, the son of Yechanan, the high priest, and the Chashmonoim, and his sons, when the wicked Hellenic government rose up against your people, Israel, to make them forget your Torah and to violate the decrees of your will. But you, referring to God, in your abounding mercies, stood by them in the time of their distress. You waged their battles, defended their rights. You avenged the wrong done to them. You delivered the mighty in the hands of the weak, the many in the hands of the few, the impure in the hands of the pure, the wicked in the hands of the righteous, and the wanton sinners into the hands of those who occupy themselves with your Torah. You made the great and the holy name for yourself in your world and effected great deliverance and redemption for your people to this very day. Then, right? So that's after speaking about the battle, right? Then your children entered into the shrine of your house, cleansed your temple, purified your sanctuary, and these are the words that we want to focus in on over here. Kindled lights in your holy courtyards, and instituted these 8 days of Hanukkah to give thanks and praise to your great name. So hidliku neres b'chatzos kodechecha are the words in Hebrew that kindled lights in your holy courtyards. So what does that mean? To kindle lights in your holy courtyard. But what's the question over here? Is that we know the menorah is not in the courtyard. The menorah is lit in the heichal, in the sanctuary, right? In the holies. So this is a question that many commentators have a difficulty with. And to try to explain, what does this mean? The Chassam Sofer, a great sage from the 19th century. So he says that lighting the menorah is permissible by someone who's not a kohen. And what the kohen did is he's brought out he cleaned the menorah right after, after it was defiled, brought it out into the courtyard, and it was lit by someone who's not a kohen. And that's because the heichal, the sanctuary, was full of idols. Right? So they brought it into the courtyard, and until, everything was taken care of in the heichal, in the sanctuary, where the menorah could go back. Right? And that way, everybody saw the miracle of the menorah being lit for 8 days in the courtyard because everybody had access there. But the Rebbe isn't satisfied with that answer, and he asks questions on it. Because if we read carefully the words, it first says that they cleaned up the mess, physical and spiritual, right? As the words say, the children, your children entered the shrine, meaning the shrine, the sanctuary of your house, cleansed your temple, purified your sanctuary, right? And then kindled the lights. So it was cleansed already, according to the way, the words are written in the prayer. So why would you have to bring it out into the courtyard if the sanctuary was already cleansed? And furthermore, simply put, the Hellenist Greeks, they didn't just defile the sanctuary, they defiled everything. So there would be equally a problem in the courtyard as it would be, or not necessarily equally, but as a matter of fact, the word says that they purified the mikdash, which means the temple, meaning all inclusive, right? Which wouldn't include the courtyard, of course. And again, that's all before the kindling of the lights. And furthermore, you can't say, well, they wanted to bring it out in the courtyard because they wanted, to publicize the miracle as we do today, right? Public menorahs. They didn't know the miracle was going to happen when they lit the menorah. The miracle happened, day by day. So okay, let's bring in the courtyard. Let's show the miracle to everyone. They didn't know. So they can't be, that's why they brought it in the courtyard. And furthermore, the words are that they lit bechatzres koichecha, which, for those who understand the Hebrew, courtyards. It's plural. It's not singular. So they lit menorahs in the courtyards. That means not one menorah. What's going on over here? Okay, so seemingly, says the Rebbe, we have to explain that those words, that they kindled the lights in your holy courtyards, doesn't mean the menorah, the holy menorah that was in the holies. It's not referring to that. Speaking about other menorahs. And they were there in order to bring praise and glory to God. And we see that idea that during Simchas Beis HaShoeva, the joy of the libation of water that's during the holiday of Sukkot, that the Talmud speaks about many menorahs, right? Back then, Thomas Edison wasn't around yet, so they didn't have light bulbs, right? So what was their source of light? Menorahs. And the Talmud tells us that they lit many menorahs, huge ones, very tall, that lit up all of Jerusalem. It was so much light that came from Temple Mount. and from the area, right? So we already see this idea in the Talmud, right? And so now if you go back to the words in the prayer, right, which is again, we say in our when we stand before God, we take 3 steps back, 3 steps forward for our private audience with the Almighty in the Amidah, Shmona Esrei, for those who are familiar. So if we read the words, right, then your children enter into the shrine of your house, cleanse your temple, purify the sanctuary, right? It's sort of like a period then. Because sanctuary, seemingly then the next thing would be in the sanctuary, which is in the holies where the menorah is, right? And then it would speak about the menorah, that it was kindled, right? So that would follow, but it wasn't kindled in the sanctuary. It's kindled in the courtyard, right? By the way, just to show you a picture, a little appreciation of what we're talking about. Nice, show you. This is the Holy of Holies where the Ark of the Covenant is. This is the Holies. Over here is the menorah. Over here was the table, the shulchan, and over here was the golden altar. Over here is the copper altar where animal sacrifices, right? This is courtyard over here. It's also courtyard, different courtyards, different levels of courtyard, right? So it's plural. Here's the courtyard for the Israelites. This is the courtyard for the priests, Kohanim. This is the women's courtyard, and so on, right? So plural courtyards. So what the Rebbe is saying is, it was not, first of all, it says clearly it wasn't lit here in the holies. It was in the courtyard. But it says courtyards, the Rebbe says. So it means various menorahs, right? Because it's in plural. So it's not the menorah of the holies, the one, the mitzvah is done to light the menorah every evening or before evening to go through the night, right? But then with the words over here, it says like purified your sanctuary. So it's a period. Then they kindled lights in your holy courtyards, plural, in order to give and institute the 8 days of Hanukkah to give thanks, praise to your great name. So those menorahs were to give praise to God, right? That's how it would continue the words in the Amida, right? And with that, then we can understand why it's in plural form, because there were full of light in all the courtyards. The women's, the Israelites, the Kohanim, the priests, and so on. But then now we have a different problem, though, if we understand it this way. The problem is then, if we go back and go through all of the words, we'll see that no mention is made at all of the menorah that was lit, and a miracle happened with it for 8 days. Right? And that wonderment is even greater when we look at the Talmud. The Talmud in Tractate Shabbos, it asks, "My Hanukkah? What is Hanukkah?" Yeah, what is it? And explains that it was based on a miracle that when the Hellenist Greeks, they entered into the sanctuary and they impurified, defiled all of the oils. They only found one flask of oil that would last for a day, and they lit it, and it lasts for 8 days until they were able. So, and then the future, and then following years, they set aside these days as a holiday, the Hallel days, to give praise and to give thanks. So it comes out, right? So it comes out that based on the Talmud, that the whole praise is based on the miracle of the oil. How is it then in the prayers that we say when we speak about the festive holiday and we say these prayers during the festive holidays that is not mentioned at all in the prayer, according to the way we're learning it now? Because now we're learning it. Remember, the Chassam Sofer wanted to learn that it means the menorah that the miracle happened with was brought out into the courtyard. We had questions on it, right? Which the Rebbe is learning. No, it's not speaking about that menorah. Yeah, but if the whole holiday was based on that menorah that the miracle happened with, why wouldn't we mention that in the prayers? Talmud mentions it, says that that's what it's all meant. Okay, I hope that question is clear. Says the Rebbe. We'll understand it for asking another question. This is now a question on the Talmud, on the sages. Why, in fact, was the holiday of Hanukkah celebrating the miracle of the lights when the miracle of the battle is seemingly what we should be celebrating? As a matter of fact, the only reason you can have miracle of the lights is because you had a miracle of the battle. We're talking about they were they were the formidable, superpower of the day. And you had a handful of Jews fighting against, forget the numbers now. Forget the numbers. It was like crazy. It was a huge miracle defeating the Hellenists. So like and hey, think about it for a moment. God forbid they would have lost the war. Not a very good like so shouldn't that be the main thing to celebrate? And the miracle, okay, hey, we're all into miracles. I mean, but the battle itself was a miracle. Okay, the miracle of oil, so that's secondary. So the explanation is given that the decree against the Jewish people was not against the body of the Jew. In other words, this wasn't like not the Nazis or the Romans. Nazis are the natural conclusion of the Romans. Chaim. Oh la la. Okay. They didn't want to destroy, and they recognize, hey, Jews are, they're good for the economy, if you will. They just wanted to destroy their religion. And we see that in the words that we say, to make them transgress your will and you should forget your Torah. In other words, they wanted to take God out of the equation. Hey, not a problem being Jewish, not a problem being different. That was not their problem. Be Jewish. Just godless Jewishness. Hmm. Sounds like maybe some kind of forms of, you know, Judaism today. Godless, right? That's what they wanted. Therefore, they made the main thing, the miracle of the oil, as oil, and not the battle. Because the battle was, physical survival. And that's not what they were fighting against us, even though there was a battle, and but really what is it was a spiritual survival. Therefore, the main thing is the oil of the miracle of God, showing the spirituality of the Jewish people, that the light of a ner mitzvah Torah, or that the the light of the mitzvah is the candle and the Torah is light. In other words, it was saving us spiritually. But this also needs explanation. You know why? Because in the Talmud, it tells us one story. What is Hanukkah? It only tells us about the miracle. It just says after we overcame, and after the Chashmonoim overcame and defeated, right? They couldn't find, right, except for one flask of oil. It doesn't even mention the miracle of the battle, right? Nothing. And yet, when it comes to our prayers, we're not mentioning it at all. And we mention at great length about how the weak ones overcame the strong ones, the few over the many, and the impure over the impure over the impure, and so on. So we got a big problem over here. Right? The Talmud doesn't mention at all the battle. And in our prayers, we mention that, and we mention, we don't mention the miracle of the menorah at all, according to the way we're learning it now. But the answers to this, we'll see you tomorrow. Just want to make sure you come back. I know you'll come back anyway.